Hello. Morning. How's everyone doing? You know it's a good day when you see the Marie Cup. Yeah, Marie Cup, what up? It's true. It's a Marie Cup day. Morning, everybody. How's everyone doing? Anya, how are you liking San Diego? Are you enjoying living there? So far, so good? Oh, that has to get washed. Loving it so far. Excellent. Love hearing that. Good morning. Ken and I have been listening to lectures. Oh, that's so sweet, Nikki. I love that. I love it. Are you guys on to do Tale of Magic with us? Kids were incredibly late to school, so ugh. It's just because there's so many of them, you know? There's just so many of them. How many children does everybody have? List your number. Drop a number with how many kids you get. Go ahead, Mom. How many kids do you have? Tee-hee-hee. Mom's here, you guys. Whitney's got 5. Mom has 3. Mary has 2. Elvia has 2. It's credit. Yeah, it is, Anya. It is. Nicole has 1. And to all the people with multiples, at what number does it get easier? When does it start feeling like they're taking care of each other? At what number? Hey Reagan, long time no see, darling. Becca has millions and never feels like they're taking care of each other. How old are yours? I feel like at some point it does, right? When your parents move into you know, she's got a point. My grandparents did live with us. Not yet, Reagan, but I want to. I've just been swamped. I've been so busy. What's everyone reading right now? Like, what's everyone's non-book club book right now? Oh, that's different, Foxy. That's different. Yeah, no, I'm gonna. If I would have had a single child first, I would have stopped. My twins were so much easier. Really? Do you think they were easier? Oh, huh. Because they keep each other entertained. Is that what you're saying, Whitney? We have so many mothers of multiples in our group. I'm not even kidding. It's wild. Daughter of the Pirate King. Whoa. Someone remind me to message Sasha about something to be the La Jolla Playhouse. Let's go to the La Jolla Playhouse anytime, all the time. Anya, I love it there. My son is coming today, and it's reason number 1. I love living close to you. I mean, it's a pretty good reason. I think there's a lot of people who feel the same way. Anya will probably get her slime tomorrow at the rate we're going. They entertained each other and helped each other calm. Yeah. That's fair. That's a really fair point, Whitney. It's a really fair point. I see what you're saying. Yeah, Roxy, I think that's a totally different situation. I just finished my book, so nothing right now. Last night before bed, I started The Butcher and the Blackbird. Has anyone heard of that one? I don't know what book I'm reading because I don't have one. I need to choose. Yeah, Naisa, I gave you a book recommendation, and I feel like you're supposed to read the book that I recommend to you because that's the kind of friendship that we have. What's going on here? Why are you not reading the book I recommended you? Yeah, Becca, totally. What is going on with my hair, do we think? Should we fix it? I think we should. I think we should fix it. Let's make this hair not crazy. Or less crazy. Now that they're teens, they're super close and it's really fun to watch. I bet. Are they boy, girl, two girls, two boys? What do you have, Whitney? I know I'll read that one out. I think you should, if you can handle audiobooks, Naisa, I recommend listening to that one because it's a real good listen. Two sets of boy, girl sets. Oh, interesting. Two sets. I recommended that Naisa read Love Theoretically. Love Theoretically was one of the best audiobooks I have listened to in a long time. Loved the reader so much that when I finished that book, I immediately looked up every single book that she is the reader for and put them all on my Libby list, and any that weren't available on Libby, I just got on Audible. Yeah. Hey. Good morning. Yeah. Good morning. Good morning. You're welcome. What can I say except good morning? That was fun, right? Mm-hmm. It was a good parody. I love it. Here's your coffee. You're welcome. Enjoy. So you have two sets of twins and one single?
I do.
Yeah. It's a lot of kids, babe. You gotta slow down. I know. I don't know. It's wild. Morning, Amanda. All right.
We're going to do a test, because I don't think I do.
You don't think you do?
Not mine.
Well, whose are they? You've been reading After Novels by Anna Todd. Oh. Oh, poor baby. Oh, no. Oh, no. She's like, why am I the only one who doesn't have a twin? Oh, no. That's so sad.
What? You know that was fun?
No, Whitney has two sets of twins and one non-twin.
Oh.
And it's the littlest one.
Oh.
And so she doesn't...
How is she basically tell the child that she's actually lucky because everyone finds twins creepy?
Oh, that's not nice, babe. Twins are not creepy, you guys. No. He's being funny. Don't listen to him. I'm sorry.
Watch The Shining.
Don't watch The Shining if you have twins, I assume. I've never seen it. Agreed, Anya. Agreed. Didn't work out for you, Nikki. But the ones you have are so lovely. I mean, this man, I tell you what. Naisa said, you're on a roll. The twins tell her it's better because she doesn't have to share a birthday, but she's still not convinced. Fair enough. You too, Reagan. You too. Oh my God. Having twins that both look like Elle would have been amazing. It would have been funny. I mean, Max and Ellie look alike. They're just different ages. That's all. Listen, it is what it is, you guys. Just make it work. Just put a wig on Max sometimes or cut Ellie's hair and there you go, twins. Whichever. I'm convinced if we had another we were twins because I don't know if I could handle 5. Yeah, no, yeah, but seriously. 5 is so many. Whitney's doing the Lord's work out there with her multiple, no, for Halloween. Oh, yeah, for Halloween. That would be funny. Wait, really, Amanda? I don't think I knew that. That's wild. You have 2 kids that aren't twins that have the same birthday? What are the odds? I mean, really slim, right? I mean, what is it? I guess 1 in 365. But like, you would, Becca. You just keep multiplying. Although I do have cousins whose birthdays are only 2 days apart, so I guess that's pretty close. They're 2 years and 2 days apart. Oh, Secret Fiance also. His sister's birthday is 3 years and 2 days before. That's wild, Amanda. Wild. Okay, so in case anyone doesn't know, we're reading A Tale of Magic. It has been beyond phenomenal, and at the end of the last chapter, for anyone who wasn't here yesterday, Madam Weatherberry arrived at the Bootstrap Correctional Facility. Well, they tried, and they were just a couple years apart from being twins. It's close, but no cigar. All right. Are we ready to see what happens now that Madam Weatherberry is here? Who's a fan of the Madam Weatherberry voice? I'm a big fan of the voice that we've cultivated for Madam Weatherberry. I tried to hold her in. That's hilarious. She was like, I'm coming. Whether you like this or not. We're here. We're sharing a birthday. You were like, I'll give her your own birthday. It didn't work. That's really funny. It's funny. It shouldn't be funny. Are we ready? Are we ready? Chapter 7 is called Permission. And in case anyone wants to know, this is what the unicorn drawn carriage looks like. Okay? All right. Oh, we're starting right off with Madam Weatherberry right out the gate. Wow, we're not waiting at all. Excuse me. I have to get it. Perhaps it wasn't clear, Madam Weatherberry said to the crowd of bewildered faces. I'm looking for a young woman named Bristol Evergreen. Would one of you be kind enough to point her out to me? Without saying a word, the Edgars, the wardens, and all the young women from the facility turned in Bristol's direction. Madam Weatherberry hadn't noticed her dangling above the well until now, and she gasped. Is that Miss Evergreen hanging up there? She asked in disbelief. What on earth are you doing to her? Bring her down this instant. We do not take orders from outsiders, Mr. Edgar shouted. The woman raised an eyebrow at the administrator. Very well, she said. I'll do it myself. Madam Weatherberry clapped her hands, and suddenly Bristol's wrists and neck were released from the Dunker's wooden board. But instead of dropping into the freezing water below, Bristol's body floated out of the well and descended gently to the ground. Mr. and Mrs. Edgar shrieked at Madam Weatherberry's magic. You're a demon girl, Mrs. Edgar yelled at Bristol. First you conjure a flock of wicked birds, and now you've summoned a witch. You've plagued this facility with sin. Excuse me, but I am not a witch, Madam Weatherberry corrected her, and I don't mean to be rude, but it looks like this place has been plagued with worse things than sin. A fresh coat of paint would do you wonders. Wait a moment. Did you just say that Miss Evergreen conjured a flock of birds? The woman was clearly impressed and turned to Bristol with a wide grin. Bristol didn't respond. She was still trying to process all the events from before Madam Weatherberry had arrived. Although she could see and hear the woman, Bristol wasn't present enough to accept that Madam Weatherberry, the unicorns, and the golden carriage was actually in front of her. You listen to me, madam, Mr. Edgar barked. I don't care who or what you are. We do not accept your kind here. Leave this facility at once. Oh, well, I think that's a splendid idea, Madam Weatherberry said. But Miss Evergreen will be coming with me. No one was more shocked to hear this than Bristol herself. She couldn't imagine what Madam Weatherberry wanted with her, but it was just one of many things that were confusing her in the moment. But before she could ask any questions, Mr. and Mrs. Edgar stepped in front of Bristol and blocked her from going anywhere near the woman. You will do no such thing, Mr. Edgar roared. This girl has been sentenced to the Bootstrap Correctional Facility by High Justice Montclair of Chariot Hills. She will remain in our care until the High Justice notifies us otherwise. Well, Madam Weatherberry seemed amused by his theatrical protest. She raised an open hand, and a golden scroll with a silver ribbon appeared out of thin air. Madam Weatherberry unrolled the document and presented it to the administrators. The Edgar's eyes grew large at the sign of King Champion the 14th's curvy signature and the official royal seal at the bottom of the scroll.
I've been given the king's permission to collect Miss Evergreen, and as any law-abiding citizen knows, His Majesty's wishes outrank the High Justice, she said. But if you have any objections you'd like to share with the king, please do be my guest.
Mr. and Mrs. Edgar exchanged nervous glances and then looked defeated and stepped aside. Even they weren't self-righteous enough to challenge the king. Bristol didn't think she could be more puzzled than she already was, but learning that King Champion was somehow involved made her dizzy. Madame Weatherbury sensed her perplexity and knelt in front of Bristol to look her in the eye.
Are you all right, my dear?
She asked. I'm so sorry, Bristol said. I'm just a bit fuzzy.
I'm sure this took you as quite a shock, the woman said. If I were in your shoes, I'd be terrified of a strange lady with unicorns, but you have absolutely nothing to fear. I've come to take you away for a wonderful opportunity, and I promise...
Oh my God, you guys. I think I know who Pip is.
I've come to take you away for a wonderful opportunity, and I promise you'll be perfectly safe with me.
Madame Weatherbury removed a handkerchief from the pocket of her gown and wiped the dirt off of Bristol's face. There was something so warm and comforting about the woman. She practically glowed with kindness. Even in her confused state, Bristol knew that she could trust her.
Now, Miss Evergreen, would you like to gather your things and join me in the carriage?
I don't have any things, Bristol said.
Oh?
Madame Weatherbury said.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being a minimalist, I suppose. The unicorns appreciate light travelers.
But where are we going? Bristol asked. And instead of answering her, Madame Weatherbury eyed Mr. and Mrs. Edgar, who were shamelessly eavesdropping on her conversation.
Well, I'm afraid I can't discuss that here, she said, but I'll answer all of your questions and explain everything on the way. Now, shall we?
Well, can I bring my friend Pip? Bristol asked. She's small and she won't take up much room.
No, I'm sorry, sweetheart, but the king has only given me permission to collect one girl, Madame Weatherbury said. Your friend will have to stay here with the others.
Bristol shook her head and slowly backed away from the woman. Being whisked away from the facility was a dream come true, but she would never forgive herself if she left Pip behind. I can't do it, she said. I'm sorry, but I can't leave her here. Madame Weatherbury caressed Bristol's cheek.
My dear, I wish you didn't have to, she said. I'm not going to force you to come with me, but I believe that you're going to be very happy where we are headed. Please reconsider.
I want to, Bristol said. I just couldn't live with myself if I left her. Bristol, are you nuts? Bristol turned to the crowd of young women behind her and saw Pip pushing her way to the front.
What are you waiting for? Her friend said. Get out of here while you still can.
No, Pip, Bristol said. I can't leave you alone in this place.
But I'm used to being alone in this place, Pip said. This facility's become my home since I was a toddler, remember? And technically, I've been getting into more trouble with you around, so maybe you'll be doing me a favor by leaving.
I don't even know where I'm going, Bristol said. What if I never see you again?
Well, then at least that's one of us that got out of here, she said. And if you waste your only chance on me, I'll never speak to you again. So now you have to go.
Pip gave Bristol no choice, but she didn't make leaving any easier. With a heavy heart and tearful eyes, Bristol gave her small friend a goodbye hug.
Well, we've wasted enough time for one day, Mr. Edgar yelled to the young women. Everyone go inside and get ready for your chores.
Like roaches, all the young women scrambled into the facility, and Pip slipped away from Bristol's embrace. Madame Weatherbury offered Bristol her hand and escorted her into the golden carriage. Well, apparently I was wrong, because I thought Pip was going with them. That's really sad. The inside of the carriage had tufted silk seats and velvet curtains, quite a contrast to the facility's decor, and she sat on the seat across from Madame Weatherbury, and Bristol was reminded how comfortable a cushion was. The carriage's ceiling was covered in leafy vines that grew berries in every color of the rainbow. Excuse me, are those real? Bristol asked.
Yes, Madame Weatherbury said. You must be famished. Please do help yourself. Bristol didn't have to be told twice. She plucked the fruit from the ceiling and devoured it whole. It was the most delicious food that she had ever tasted, and every time she pulled a handful of berries from the vines, a new bunch magically appeared in its place. The carriage door shut on its own, and the unicorns raced down the path through the property. By the time Bristol had finished eating, the Bootstrap Correctional Facility had already disappeared into the bleak distance behind them. "It was very considerate of you to think of your friend," Madam Weatherbury said. "Not many people would have done that." "Well, she doesn't deserve to be there," Bristol said. "None of the girls do." Madam Weatherbury nodded and let out a prolonged sigh. "This may be difficult to hear, but the girls at the facility are lucky compared to some of the others I've seen," she said. "What the world does to people like you and me is downright tragedy, and humanity's understanding of magic is one of the greatest misconceptions of our time." Bristol did a double take. Madam Weatherbury's choice of words reminded her of something that she had read a couple weeks earlier. "Wait a second," she said. "Are you Cecily Weatherbury, the author of The Truth About Magic?" Madam Weatherbury was shocked to hear Bristol mention the title of her book. "Why, yes," she said in disbelief. "But how did you know about that?" "Well, The Truth About Magic is the reason that I was sent to the Bootstrap Correctional Facility," Bristol explained. "I found a copy in the secret section of the library that I worked at, and I was with all the other books, and they should have been banned in the Southern Kingdom." "Well, I can't imagine a greater compliment for an author than making the banned book section," Madam Weatherbury laughed. "Did you read my book?" "As much as I could," Bristol said. "I read about the history of magic and the difference between the fairies and the witches and how the world mistakes magic for witchcraft, and eventually I got to the part with the ancient incantation, and I foolishly read them aloud in the library and caught me conjuring magic, and the High Justice sent me to the facility to get cured of it." "How absurd," she said. "Magic isn't an illness. It can't be cured. What kind of magic did you conjure when you read the text?" "Well, it's been difficult and different every time," Bristol explained. "The first time I covered the room in flowers. The second time I made thousands of lights appear. And this morning a flock of birds showed up, and that's why I was hanging in the well." Madam Weatherbury moved to the edge of her seat. "Had you experienced anything magical prior to reading the text in my book?" "No," Bristol said with a shrug. I've never even suspected that I was capable of such. Is it a bad thing?" "On the contrary," she said. "Magic presents itself differently to each of us. Some fairies have magical traits and abilities from birth. Some develop later in life. Usually beginners can only alter the elements around them, but a talent for manifestation is rarely found in novices. With practice and proper instruction, you could develop your abilities into something quite extraordinary." Madam Weatherbury became lost in thought and rubbed her chin as she thought of Bristol's potential. The woman's curiosity made Bristol uneasy. She still had so many questions, and they only seemed to multiply in Madam Weatherbury's presence. "Excuse me, Madam Weatherbury, can you please tell me what's going on?" Bristol asked. "Why did the king give you permission to take me out of the facility?" "Oh, I apologize for leaving you in suspense," Madam Weatherbury said. Changing voices is difficult. "As you may have gathered from reading The Truth About Magic, I'm on a mission to change the world's perception of magic. And if everything goes according to my plan, we can create a new world that finally accepts and respects people like us." "But how?" she asked. "Where do you even begin?" Madam Weatherbury's eyes twinkled with excitement. "With a school for magic." "A school?" "Right now, I'm calling it Madam Weatherbury's Academy of Magical Comprehension, but it's still a working title," she said. "With compassion and guidance, I'm going to teach young fairies to harness and develop their abilities. Once their training is complete, my students will use magic to help and heal people around the world. With time, our acts of kindness will change people's opinion. Once they realize magic isn't the vile practice that they've come to fear, the magical community will be embraced, and all the senseless violence and hatred towards us will become a thing of the past." "And you want me to join your academy?" Bristol asked in shock. "Well, of course I do," Madam Weatherbury said. "Why else would I have made the trip to collect you?" Bristol tried to make sense of it all, but her day had been so overwhelming it was really impossible to think clearly. "Okay, but the facility was filled with girls who have been doing magic their entire lives. Why choose me?" "Because you were the brightest star on my map," Madam Weatherbury said. Before Bristol could ask what she meant, Madame Weatherbury moved up the armrest of her seat to reveal a secret compartment. She removed a large scroll and carefully unrolled it across her lap. As soon as the document was opened, the carriage was filled with shimmering lights. It was a regular map of the world showing the borders of the 4 kingdoms and the in-between, but it was sprinkled with hundreds of twinkling stars. "What is this?" Bristol asked wide-eyed. "It's a map of magic," Madame Weatherbury said. "Every speck of light represents a different fairy or a witch who is living in the world today. The brighter the light, the more powerful their magic. King Champion only permitted to recruit 2 students from the Southern Kingdom, so I've decided to recruit the brightest students that I could find." "And I was one of the brightest students?" Bristol asked. Madame Weatherbury nodded and pointed to the northeast corner of the Southern Kingdom on the map. "Do you see this cluster of smaller lights here? Those are girls at the Bootstrap Correctional Facility, but these larger lights, slowly moving away from the others, represent you and me." Madame Weatherbury touched the smaller of the 2 as if written by an invisible quill. The name Bristol Evergreen appeared beside it, and then she tapped the bigger star, and the name Cecily Weatherbury appeared next. Bristol was awestruck as she looked over the map. She hadn't known so many fairies and witches existed in the world, and now Madame Weatherbury's point had been made. She rolled up the map and placed it back in the compartment under the armrest. "Do you have to follow the king's instructions?" Bristol asked. "Surely you wouldn't notice if you recruited 1 or 2 extra students along the way." "Unfortunately, it is the best that I can do," Madame Weatherbury said. "I've been down this road many times before, and if we want acceptance in this world, then we must be very careful about how we seek acceptance. No one is going to respect us if we cut corners and cause problems. I could have snapped my fingers and transported all of the girls out of the facility, but it only would have caused people to resent us more. Hatred is like fire. No one can extinguish fire by giving it fuel." "I wish hatred was fire," Bristol said. "People like the Edgars and the Justices deserve to be burned alive for how they treat people." "Without question," Madame Weatherbury said. "However, we cannot let vengeance motivate us and distract us from doing what is right. It may seem like justice, but revenge is a double-edged sword, my dear. The longer you hold it, the deeper you cut yourself." Bristol sighed. "I just felt so bad for those girls at the facility," she said. "Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces in my mind. I wish there was a way that we could help them." "But we are helping them. We may not save your friends today or tomorrow, but with patience and diplomacy, we can make a lasting difference so the girls like Pip are never sent to places like the Bootstrap facility again." Bristol understood what Madame Weatherbury was saying, but her plan seemed too ambitious to work. The world would require a tremendous change of heart to accept magic. She couldn't picture the world changing that much. "I'm sorry, but I just feel like this is an unrealistic goal," she said. "I'd like to imagine a world where fairies can live openly and honestly, but how can they live without fear or persecution? I just can't imagine it." Every accomplishment in history started as an unrealistic goal," Madame Weatherbury said. "A prosperous future is built by the persistence of its past, and we cannot let doubt hold our persistence hostage. What I am suggesting isn't certain, and it isn't going to be easy, but we have to at least try. Even if we fail, every step we take forward will be a step for our successors that they won't have to take." Although she still felt a bit cynical, Bristol was inspired by Madame Weatherbury's passion. She had never imagined a future for herself that involved a school for magic, but in many ways, Madame Weatherbury was offering her the purpose and the future she had always dreamt about. Whether they succeeded in changing the world or not, a life devoted to helping people and developing her magical abilities was infinitely better than living at the Bootstrap Correctional Facility. What's going on? I'm missing a lot. Aw, thanks, guys. Sweet. "Well, it sounds like an adventure," she said. "I'd love to join your Academy of Magic." "Oh, I'm delighted to hear it," Madame Weatherbury said. "Delighted and relieved. Unicorns hate changing direction mid-journey." "Well, where is your school?" Bristol asked. "It sits in the southeast between the southern and eastern kingdoms," Madame Weatherbury said. "Don't let the location worry you." The academy is very well protected, and I spare no expense to keep it safe. But first, we have to make a brief stop so that I can get your parents' permission to take you. What? Bristol exclaimed. Well, why do you need their permission? Well, the king was adamant that I get the approval from the pupils' guardians, she said. And as I explained, it's important that we do follow his wishes. Bristol had suspected that Madame Weatherbury's plan was too good to be true, and now she had proof. Just as she started looking forward to the new life at the academy with magic, the rug was pulled out from under her and her high hopes came crashing down. We should just turn around, Bristol said. My father is a very well-known justice in the Southern Kingdom. He sent me to the Bootstrap Correctional Facility as a personal favor, so no one would ever find out that I was arrested for magic. He'll never let me attend your school. Madame Weatherbury waved her hand like Bristol's concern was a harmless fly. Oh, don't worry, dear, I'm very persuasive, she said. I managed to get the king's blessing. How hard could a justice be? We'll just have a nice chat with him this evening. This evening? Bristol asked. Well, my family lives in Chariot Hills. That's a 2-day journey. Madame Weatherbury was charmed by Bristol's obliviousness, and a coy smile grew on her face. Actually, unicorns make better time than average horses, she said and gestured to the window. Take a look for yourself. Bristol had been so wrapped up in their conversation that she hadn't taken a glimpse out the window since they left. But when she finally did, her mouth dropped open. The golden carriage was moving through the northeast plains at a lightning speed. The dismal land passed her window so quickly that it was a blur. Oh, man, I think I'm going to like magic, she said. By dusk, the unicorns reached the outskirts of Chariot Hills and slowed to a normal pace. They pulled the golden carriage through the busy town square, and the pedestrians froze as Bristol and Madame Weatherbury drove past them. Bristol saw a cluster of her former classmates among the gawking crowd. As she rolled by, the girls went as white as their uniforms, and their eyes doubled in size. Bristol gave them a friendly wave, but quickly realized this was a mistake because it caused one of the girls to faint. The golden carriage took the path to the eastern countryside, and soon the evergreen home appeared in the distance. Although Bristol hadn't been gone very long, it felt like years had passed since she was home. The unicorn stopped in front of the house, and Madame Weatherbury climbed out of the carriage, but Bristol lingered behind. Don't worry, I'll handle this, Madame Weatherbury said. Trust me. She offered Bristol her hand and helped her to the ground. They approached the front door, and Madame Weatherbury gave it a cheer. Sorry, you guys. Madame Weatherbury gave it a cheerful knock with her gloved left hand, and a few moments later, Bristol heard her mother's footsteps in the entryway behind the door. I'm coming, she grumbled. What can I do for... As soon as she opened the door, Mrs. Evergreen shrieked and covered her mouth like she was seeing a ghost. Bristol was taken aback by her mother's appearance, too. She noticed the circles under Mrs. Evergreen's eyes had grown darker, and her bun was pulled even tighter. Clearly, doing all the house chores without any help had taken a toll on her. Hello, Mother, Bristol said sheepishly. Surprise? Bristol, her mother cried. What in the Lord's blue skies are you doing here? Okay, it's a long story, she said, but before Bristol had a chance to explain, Mrs. Evergreen threw her arms around her daughter and hugged her so tightly that she couldn't breathe. I didn't think I would ever see you again, she said with tears in her eyes. Your father said you were caught conjuring magic in the library. I didn't believe it. I told him there had to be a mistake. My beautiful girl couldn't be capable of such a thing. And then your brothers told me about that awful trial, and I swear if I ever see that Justice Overgate, I'll just strangle him until he's a normal color. They said the High Justice sent you to the facility in the Northeast to be cured. Have they cured you already? Is that why you've come home? Bristol winced at her mother's wishful thinking. It wasn't going to be easy for her to hear the truth. Mrs. Evergreen was so pleased to see her daughter that she hadn't noticed Madame Weatherbury or the golden carriage until now. Who are you? She asked. Hello, Mrs. Evergreen. My name is Madame Weatherbury, she said. Forgive me for showing up unannounced. I was given permission by His Majesty to remove Bristol from the Bootstrap Correctional Facility for special project I'm developing. May I have a word with you and your husband to discuss it? Oh? Mrs. Evergreen was surprised to hear this. My husband only had one trial this afternoon, so he should be home momentarily. Please do come in and I'll make tea while you wait. Mrs. Evergreen escorted Bristol and Madame Weatherbury to the sitting room and then stepped into the kitchen to make tea. Madame Weatherbury looked around and was tickled by the Evergreens' mismatched furniture and wallpaper. Your house is so thrifty, she said. Oh, my father isn't a fan of extravagance, Bristol said. Yes, it shows. Mrs. Evergreen returned to the sitting room with a tray of tea. Please have a seat, she said while she served them. I imagine you're both very tired from your journey. Your father said the facility is all the way at the tip of the northern plains. Actually, the trip flew by, Bristol said with a nervous laugh. How long are you staying? Mrs. Evergreen asked. Your brothers don't usually get home from court until late. They'll be so sorry if they missed you. Thank you, Becca. And thank you for the new follow person. I can't imagine our conversation will last very long, Bristol said. We'll probably be on our way shortly after he arrives. Please give Brooks and Barry my love. Oh, I will, Mrs. Evergreen said, and then looked her daughter up and down with concern. Oh, Bristol, what have they done to you in that facility? You're practically skin and bones. I hope they're helping you at least with your, condition. Not exactly, Bristol said. Before she elaborated, their conversation was interrupted by the sounds of her father's carriage pulling up to the house. Bristol took a deep breath to mentally prepare herself for what was to come. A few moments later, Justice Evergreen entered the house and charged down the hall. He hadn't seen his daughter yet and was already in a temper.
Why is there a ridiculous carriage and 4 flamboyant horses outside our house? He shouted. What will the neighbors think if they see... As the justice barged into the sitting room, Madame Weatherbury and Bristol rose from their chairs to greet him. It took a few seconds for Justice Evergreen to recognize his daughter, but once he did, his face turned bright red and his nostrils flared. He growled like a defensive animal. What is she doing in my house? He barked.
Mrs. Evergreen jumped in front of her husband and waved like a clown, distracting a bull. Please don't get upset just yet, she pleaded. This woman has removed Bristol from the facility with permission from the king.
The king? What could he possibly want with her?
I don't know. They just arrived, Mrs. Evergreen said. Please, give them a chance to explain. A few deep breaths later, Justice Evergreen had taken a reluctant seat on the sofa across from his daughter, and Madame Weatherbury extended her arm to shake the justice's hand, but he did not accept the gesture. Justice Evergreen, it's my pleasure to make your acquaintance, she said. My name is Madame Weatherbury, and I thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Get to the point, he ordered.
Oh, I see you're a man who appreciates a good summary, Madame Weatherbury said. Very well, I'll make this short. I'm here because King Champion has given me permission to open an academy. I'm traveling through the Southern Kingdom to recruit students, but my academy isn't your typical school. It's an academy for, very special children with unique abilities. Mrs. Evergreen clapped her hands in celebration. Oh, that's wonderful! His Majesty wants our daughter to join a special school.
What do you mean with unique abilities? The justice asked suspiciously. I sincerely doubt you're recruiting academics or athletics from correctional houses.